Hello, students. Sorry I can't be with you today. This is about using context clues to figure out unknown words or unfamiliar words. Like you've learned in the past, when you come across an unfamiliar word, you use the context to figure it out. And what we mean by context is the words or the sentences that are around the unfamiliar words. So the words or sentences that are surrounding it. Okay. All right, so we're going to go through an example, actually a few examples. The first one, since Anne loves plants, she is studying botany. Anne is currently raising orchids. They have colorful and unusually shaped flowers. So I can understand what the word botany means by reading the sentences around it. So botany is the word not really sure about. Okay, since the sentence has the word plants in it, right here. Okay, whoop, yellow's probably not the best for that. Let's change that. Okay, since it has the word plants in it, I know that botany must have to do with studying plants. Make sense? All right, the next sentence contains the unfamiliar word orchids. And I'll underline that. Okay, so some of you may or may not know what orchids are, but I read on to see that the next sentence explains that orchids have colorful flowers. Okay, so we see the word flowers down here. Okay, and they're colorful and unusually shaped flowers. Okay, so by reading that, I realize that orchids are a flowering plant. So all of those clues help me realize that the word orchids must be a plant or a plant that has flowers. Okay, so let's move on and do a few more examples before you go off and do your assignment. All right, example number 1. Paint is made using a dry colored powder or pigment. So the unknown word here we're not really sure about is pigment. Okay, so I can read the rest of the sentence. I can say paint is made of using a dry colored powder or pigment. So I see this dry colored powder. Okay. And by seeing that, I know that pigment is some sort of powder that's colored. Okay, so I'm using the context to figure out what the word pigment means. Okay, let's move on to another example. The liquid is toxic or poison. Okay, so our word here that we're trying to figure out is toxic. Okay, and I use the context, the words and phrases around that word to figure out what the word toxic means. Well, I see here it says poison. Okay, and by seeing that, I realize that the word toxic means poison. Okay, so that was a slightly easier one probably. Let's go to a different example. All right, example number 3. My uncle loves to travel. He writes in his diary on every excursion. So excursion is probably not a word that we hear very often. But I'm going to use the context to figure out what that means. All right, so my uncle loves to travel. Keyword travel. Okay, and he writes in his diary on every excursion. So by seeing that word travel, I have an idea and I can realize that the word excursion has something to do with traveling. Okay, so now it's your turn. Complete the activity on context clues that's posted in the classroom.